Hello and welcome to my first After Effects tutorial. Potentially some of you won't notice, but I will be editing today on After Effects 2024 as the latest version of 2025 won't start. Yeah, great. In this tutorial, I'm going to kind of be easing you into After Effects because I've seen a lot of people turn around to me and say, Ryan, I don't like After Effects because this shit is way too stressful. I mean, there's so many buttons and layers and controls and this is scary. But I want to focus up here in the top bar, just above the toolbar before we start, because in here is a lot for us to go over, so I'm not going to sit here for ages, but I will explain what everything does. Under File is what you would expect, right? So you can start a new project, new folders and stuff like that. You can open project files, close project files, save with the shortcut Control S. I will be explaining a bit more as to how important this is later. You can import your footage through here if you don't want to drag and drop it. You can export, you can add stuff to media encoder or render here, and there's a bunch of others, project settings as well. There's a lot of other settings. Under edit now, we can come in here, paste, duplicate, select, purge, which is your cache empty. So see in here, because I've obviously edited before, I've got 90 gigabytes of video cache for me to clear here, so I'll go ahead and do that. Great, now that is done, I can go back over to the Edit tab. Under Preferences, this is not something I'm going to be going over today, but it's something you might want to take a look at. This will help kind of your feel of your editing software, kind of how smooth it runs, or maybe any personal preferences you can go and dive in under here. Composition is something I will explain now. So when you're importing footage, you're going to want to import it into this little box. You could drag it straight onto the timeline, but I prefer to drag it up here. Now, if I drag it down here into the timeline, this automatically creates a composition, which is basically a project. And you can go up here into the Composition tab and go to Composition Settings, and you can change the settings in this composition. So I can change the frame rate, the height, the width, the aspect ratio, and there's some other more complicated settings you might not want to dabble into just yet. I always like to set my start time code to 0 because not all videos do, and also compositions will default to the settings of your videos. So this video I just dropped in here is clearly a 2160 by 3840 video in 5994 FPS. So this is a 4K 60 FPS video, as we can see here. Now that you've got a clip into your timeline, what do you do now? Well, let's keep over here on the clip and we can have a play with this. On the left here, this is hide and show layer. This eye here, this is hide and show. So if you don't want to see this layer anymore, make it disappear, right? Do exactly the same. You can mute the layer if it has any audio. You don't want that playing. Gone, boom, like that. There's some more controls along here though, you'll notice. So this is frame blending. So this adds any extra frames to the video that may not be there. So let's say I slow this clip down 50% and I want it to be the same length, so it's nice and slow. I can add frame blending and it will stop that choppy stutter you see in a lot of people's edits. So there's two settings. There's kind of this one and there's this one. The second option is better, and the first option makes it look more blurry. So the first option is kind of more like a motion blur, and the second is more of a cleaner option. I prefer to have it set to this little icon here. Just feels a bit smoother, and you can add your own motion blur to your videos later anyway. This is the motion blur toggle on and off motion blur. This is also up here, but this controls motion blur for multiple videos. So if it's on here, you can turn it off and you won't have motion blur at all. or you can turn it back on, and your motion blur will be on for all of your videos. This button here, this is not quite as useful. This turns the layer into an adjustment layer. I don't use this ever, so I'm going to skip over this. This next one is a very big one though. It turns the layer into a 3D layer. So as soon as I select this box, we can see we have some options here, and we can rotate it Y, and we can rotate it X, and we can rotate it Z. So see, now I've got this video kind of on its side, all over the place. Oh Ryan, now my video's on its side. How do I take this back? Control Z will take you back every step, all the way to the start. See, Control Z again, it will even unselect my layer. So Control Z is undo, and it will be your saving grace for when you're editing. If we go over back to the left here, we'll see this little arrow. Let's drop this down. We have transform and audio. Under audio, you can open this up, you can change the audio levels, and you can open up the waveform, which this doesn't have because not only have I muted the layer, but also there's no sound. There's no sound on this clip. So we're not going to worry too much about this, but anything you see that is blue is interactable. Set this to 5 decibels louder. Or I could click on it again and I could hit 0. Leave it as it is. If we go ahead and open up the transform option, we'll see a lot of options here. First one is anchor point. This is quite an advanced option, and it's not something you're probably going to use much early on. However, if we change this, we'll see the video moves. But this centerpiece here, this is the anchor point here. And this doesn't move because this is the middle of the video. So moving the anchor point, we're changing the central position of the video. So let's just reset that. So this, you know, is useful if you're trying to keyframe stuff, if you're rotating, any other kind of bits like that. Position is very, very simple. Position is left and right as well as up and down. If you actually right click position, you can separate the dimensions as well, and you can keyframe these separately. However, I'm going to be touching on that probably in a future video. That's just a little tip that a lot of people don't know. Scale, again, very, very simple. Scale is just big and small. It's exactly what you thought it would be. If you go down too much, it will come back as a flipped image in the negative kind of numbers. So scale is very simple. You're not really going to want to scale up videos, but you might, and if you do, this is there if you need it. Rotation is also exactly as simple as you think it is. You turn it and the video rotates. Do I even have to explain opacity? Turn it down and the video fades out. Turn it up and the video fades in. On the timeline itself, you may be scared. Don't be. Left click on the clip and you can move it however you want. If you have 2 clips on your timeline, you can move them around so they will interact differently with each other. So let's say I want this clip here, hold left click and I will drag it along this way. I can go ahead and play this clip and it will fade into the next. Also, if you right click and go back into composition settings, you can actually see the duration of the composition here. You can set how long it is. So if this isn't long enough for you, you can just go into composition settings and you can set this to, let's say, 33 seconds. Let's say that's how long I want. Hit OK. Zoom out using Alt scroll wheel or this little thing. Alt scroll wheel, whatever you need, and you can zoom out. See, now we're at this very obvious 32 seconds here. So there's a couple of more extra little bits I haven't spoken about. This here is the work area. So this is adjusted by, again, holding left click and dragging it Oh, this is the time indicator, by the way. This is literally what your video plays on, so try not to lose this somewhere down here and then zoom in and then you'll be like, ah, why does my video work? It's because of this. You need to make sure that this is always going to be in a certain position. This will affect the duration of your video, so if my play area is here, it will end there. Work area, sorry. If I set it over here, then the video will play all the way until here. All the way to the end. So you can extend this to however you want. Over here are markers. I personally don't use markers very much. They do what it says on the can. If you need to make a cut here, you set the marker here. You then drag your footage in and you know exactly where to make that cut. So when you hit play, the video cuts. Basic shortcuts. Scale is S. Position is P. To go to the start or the end of the selected clip, which you can select either from the name or on the timeline, you would hit O or I to go to either the start or the end. O is the end, I is the start of the clip. This way you can jump around very, very quickly if I need to take a look at different clips or whatever. Control Shift D is cut. Say that, for example, I don't want my video to start here. I want it to start here. So I would hit Control, Shift and D onto my keyboard and it will cut the video into two. It will have this clip now and this clip. It will split the same clip into two. Now I can delete this by selecting it and hitting the backspace, and now it isn't there anymore. And my video will play from where I cut it. Control S, like I said earlier, is save. So make sure to hit that all the time, because if you didn't know this already, After Effects is incredibly unstable and it will crash if you're using a lot. Now if we right click on these clips here, there's a lot of options. So I'm only going to go over the important ones here because again there's a lot and we don't have time for that today. Time. You can enable time remapping by Control Alt T. I wouldn't do it in this menu. I would just memorize Control Alt T will bring you up time remapping. I will touch on this in a future video in detail. Time reverse layer does what it says on the can. Reverses the video, plays it backwards. This takes quite a long time to render, so I'm not going to play this, but it does what it says on the can. You don't need me to explain that to you. Time stretch literally tells you what speed you want the clip to be, except it works backwards. So 50 is 2 times speed, so 200 is half speed. So if you want it 10% faster, you would select 90, and now your video is 10% faster than it was before. Freeze frame literally does what you think it does. It freezes the video on the frame that you're selected at. Say I want this frame here, I want exactly this. I come in here, I right click, time, freeze frame, and now the entire video is frozen to this image. This is super helpful for if you're masking or creating transitions, or maybe you just need to keep a hold of a still. This is a very helpful option to have. Freeze on last frame does a very similar option as well, and it just freezes the video after the video ends. So the video doesn't end, it just freezes and it stays there. Frame blending is what I was talking about down here. Just use these two options. There's no point coming up here and doing all of this. Effect, there's already an effects tab, so I'm not coming over this today. Track and stabilize is incredibly helpful. We can track the camera, we can stabilize the video, and we can track the motion of the video. I will be touching up on all of these in a future video as well. Skipping over the rest here, we can go down to pre-compose. If we pre-compose here and select move all attributes into the new composition and adjust composition duration to the time span of the selected layers, and we hit OK, you'll see now the audio comes back on and the clip changes color. Why is that? Well, if we go ahead and mute this and we double left click into the composition, you'll notice the video's here. This is where the video is. But it's in here. Why is it in here? What is the use for this? Well, this is very helpful for if you need to group videos together. If you're creating a more complex video and you've got a lot going on, you've got adjustment layers going on, you've got solids, you've got effects, you have masks, you have overlays, sound effects, you're going to want to compose these together to keep your timeline smooth and tidy. Having too much all over the place is not going to help you. If you have 80, 100, 120 tracks, your project is going to go everywhere and it's going to get very messy very quickly. Invert selection, again, does exactly what you think it does. It just inverts everything else that you've selected. And rename, you can just rename the clip if for whatever reason you need to name masks or solids or whatever reason, you may just need to rename it. Or you can right click and rename it in there. Just a small couple of extra touches I wanted to add is down here. You might see there's a lot going on here that I haven't spoken about. This option here on the left, this is your zoom. This is pretty pointless, as you can just drag your mouse over and use the scroll wheel to zoom in, or if you click and hold in the middle mouse wheel, you can move it around. So I can zoom in here and I can take a look here. The only way that this is useful is if you open this up and you select fit. It will then resize the video to exactly fit your workspace in the frame. This, where it says quarter, this drop down is the preview quality. This will totally depend on how powerful your computer is. Full will do exactly what you think it will. It will render this video in the highest quality. In the full 4K video or whatever quality, this will render your video in the highest quality is available. Now you have half, which will do half the quality, third, which is a third of the quality, and quarter, which is obviously a quarter of the quality. A lot of these other buttons down here are relatively miscellaneous. Toggle transparency grid is helpful because it will tell you if maybe when you're rendering potentially as a PNG or as a video, you'll be able to see what your transparent background looks like if you have all of your layers hidden potentially. Or if I move this layer over here and I turn this layer off, then I'll know if I render this right now, it will look like a grid and there won't actually be anything there. This is the exposure. This doesn't actually change the clip, this just changes the exposure of the timeline. So this isn't color grading, this isn't color correction, this is just pointless. I mean, if you have a dark scene then you could turn it up, but apart from that, I'm not really sure on what the applications of this would be. I've never used it myself. If at any point you need to go ahead and create a new composition, you can come down into any empty space. I like to use this one. You can right click here and you can select new and you can open maybe text. You can make a solid, a light, a camera, an object, a shape, or an adjustment layer. All of these are not very useful unless maybe you're doing a content aware fill. Right click up in this tab, new composition, and you can make a new one. I'm not really sure why you would want to do this. Maybe on a bigger project. I'm not too sure. Anyway, that was my quick little dive into After Effects, and it's very, very basic. Let me know on the next tutorial you want me to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Let me know what you want. Maybe in the next video, I'd be more than happy to go over that, teach you maybe coloring. This has been Ryan with your editing guide. Thank you all and have a great day.